Inside the Florida Everglades, scientists are fighting one of the strangest invasions in America. Burmese pythons have spread through South Florida, and their impact has reached far beyond the snakes themselves. Rabbits, raccoons, opossums, and other native animals have suffered dramatic declines in areas where the pythons became established. But now comes the unusual part. The idea of releasing predator wasps to stop Burmese pythons sounds like something from a science fiction movie. But there is a problem. There is no reliable evidence that Florida has deployed millions of predator wasps to attack Burmese pythons. So what is actually happening in the Everglades? And why are stories about insects, parasites, and biological control becoming connected to America's most notorious invasive snake? The real answer is stranger than the headline. The Everglades does have a python problem, but the story does not begin with wasps. It begins with a snake that was never supposed to be there. Burmese pythons are native to Southeast Asia. In South Florida, however, they found something almost as important as food, a place where they could survive. Warm temperatures, vast wetlands, and an enormous supply of prey. Over time, the snakes became established across large parts of the Everglades, and researchers began noticing something disturbing. Some mammals were becoming harder and harder to find. Marsh rabbits were especially vulnerable. These rabbits are not simply small animals living in the grass. They are part of the food web. When their numbers fall, the change can ripple through the ecosystem. But the pythons created an even bigger problem. They don't need to hunt in the same way as many native predators. They can wait. They can move quietly through water and vegetation. And when prey comes close enough, the attack can be almost impossible to see coming. Scientists studying the Everglades eventually had evidence that the invasion was changing native wildlife. But removing the snakes was another story. They are difficult to find. They blend into their surroundings. And the Everglades is enormous. Thousands of acres of tangled wetlands can hide a single snake. So researchers began searching for better ways to detect them. That is where the story takes an unexpected turn, because scientists really have experimented with biological tools against invasive species. But not every strange-sounding biological control idea is aimed at the python itself. And that distinction matters, because the biggest question is no longer whether Florida can kill more pythons. It is whether scientists can find a weakness in an invasion that has already spread through an entire ecosystem. And one proposed solution points somewhere nobody expected, to something much smaller than a python. The smaller threat was not another predator. It was an experiment. Scientists studying invasive species have long known that controlling a biological invasion is rarely as simple as killing the invader. Sometimes, the real battle is finding where the invasion is vulnerable. In Florida, researchers have explored unusual ways to locate Burmese pythons. One of the most promising ideas involves their own biology. Pythons leave behind chemical traces as they move through the environment. Researchers have been investigating whether these clues could help reveal where the snakes are hiding. But there was another problem. Even if a python is detected, someone still has to reach it. And the Everglades makes that brutally difficult. Dense vegetation can hide a snake only a few feet away. Murky water can conceal its movement, and a large python can remain almost completely motionless while waiting for prey. Then came the unsettling realization. The snakes did not need to eliminate every rabbit or mammal. They only needed enough prey to survive and reproduce. That made the invasion much harder to stop. But the idea of using insects against invasive species was not completely imaginary. Florida and other regions have used carefully studied biological control organisms against certain invasive pests. The goal is always the same. Find something that targets the problem without creating an even bigger one. And that is where the wasp story becomes dangerous, because releasing millions of insects into an ecosystem is not something scientists can simply try and reverse. A biological control agent can spread. It can interact with native species, and if researchers get the target wrong, the solution can become another ecological problem. So, before anyone talks about releasing millions of wasps, there is one question that has to be answered first. What exactly would those wasps be attacking? Because the answer changes the entire story. The answer is not the python, and that changes everything. The idea of using predator wasps against Burmese pythons sounds dramatic. But Burmese pythons are not being attacked by clouds of wasps in the Everglades. The real biological control research is aimed at something very different. Invasive species programs often target parasites, insects, plants, or other organisms that create ecological damage. The problem is that controlling one species can never be treated like pressing a button. The Everglades is a connected system. Change one part, and something else may respond. That is exactly why scientists are cautious about biological control. Before a species can be considered for release, researchers have to determine what it attacks, whether it can survive in the new environment, and whether native species could be harmed. And with the Burmese python invasion, there is an even bigger obstacle. The snakes are not sitting in one place. They are scattered across an enormous landscape. Some hide in shallow water. Others disappear into dense vegetation. And some can travel long distances without being noticed. That makes the original headline sound much simpler than the real problem. Millions of wasps would not solve the python invasion, but the search for biological weaknesses is still important because scientists are trying to understand something more fundamental. How do you fight an invasive predator when the landscape itself is helping it survive? Every year the snakes remain established. They continue interacting with native wildlife. And researchers cannot simply erase decades of ecological change. The most disturbing possibility is that there may be no single weapon capable of fixing the problem. No insect, no trap, no quick solution. Only a combination of methods applied across one of the most difficult environments in the United States. And one of those methods has already revealed just how difficult catching these snakes can be. Catching a Burmese python is one thing. Finding one is another. Researchers and wildlife teams have tried different methods to locate these snakes, including radio tracking snakes that can lead them toward larger individuals. And sometimes that strategy works, but it also exposes the scale of the problem. A python can disappear into a landscape where humans struggle to move at all. Thick vegetation, shallow water, hidden channels. miles of difficult terrain. Every search becomes a race against an animal that knows the environment better than the people looking for it. Then came the mini twist. The most useful biological weapon against the invasion may not be a weapon at all. It may be information. Scientists have been studying how Burmese pythons move, where they concentrate, and what environmental conditions make them easier to detect. Some research has even explored using trained dogs to locate hidden snakes. The goal is simple: turn an invisible predator into a detectable target. Because killing one python matters, but finding the next one matters too. And that is where the enormous numbers become misleading. There is no button that removes an established python population from the Everglades. Even intensive removal efforts cannot guarantee that every snake will be found. For native wildlife, that means the pressure does not simply disappear after a successful hunt. The ecosystem remains exposed, and the longer the snakes remain established, the harder the problem becomes. This is why the claim about millions of predator wasps needs to be treated carefully. The real battle is not a giant insect army descending on the Everglades. It is a much slower scientific campaign involving detection, research, trapping, tracking, and removal. And scientists are still trying to determine how much difference those methods can actually make, because the final question is the hardest one. Even if humans become better at finding the snakes, can they remove enough of them to give the Everglades a chance to recover? The answer is uncomfortable. There is no single solution, and there is no evidence that millions of predator wasps are being released into the Everglades to kill Burmese pythons. The real fight is far more complicated. Florida has been removing pythons for years. Wildlife teams search difficult terrain. Researchers study their movements. Specialists use tracking and detection techniques to improve the chances of finding snakes that would otherwise remain hidden. But removing pythons is only part of the challenge. The larger goal is protecting what remains, because the damage caused by an invasive predator cannot always be measured by the number of snakes caught. It can be seen in the animals that become harder to find, in the places where native species disappear, and in the slow changes taking place across an ecosystem. That is what makes the Burmese python problem so difficult. The Everglades is enormous. The snakes are adaptable, and humans are trying to reverse a problem that has already become deeply established. There is also a lesson in the wasp story. Biological control can be powerful, but it can also be dangerous if scientists misunderstand what they are releasing. A solution has to be more precise than the problem. Otherwise, the cure can create another invasion. For now, the battle against Burmese pythons depends on a combination of science, technology, trained teams, and persistent removal. There is no magic insect army waiting to end the invasion overnight, and there may never be. But every python removed can mean one less predator competing with the wildlife that evolved here. The Everglades is still fighting to recover, and scientists are still searching for better ways to give it that chance. If you want more real stories about the hidden battles changing our natural world, subscribe.